Hey rock stars, it is Monday. That means it's time for another Life Mastery Moment, and this week we're talking all about fear. So what the heck is it? Well, if you remember a couple weeks ago, I shared with you the thought model or the consciousness model, or some people just call it the model. And the thought model states that there are circumstances or events in our life, and from those circumstances or events, we could trigger thoughts. And our thoughts can trigger our emotions, or emotions are behaviors and actions which lead to our results or the outcomes in our life. So if fear is an emotion or a feeling, then that feeling is preceded on the model by a thought. And so we are having thoughts that are triggering this feeling of fear. Here's what you need to know about fear-based thoughts though. Our fear-based thoughts are future-focused. So anytime you're experiencing fear, it's not the event that you're experiencing right now that you're afraid of. Probably what's happening is you are predicting what might happen in the future, and it's not always the immediate future. Sometimes it could be, seconds, days, months, years out. You're predicting something that may cause harm to you, and it's not necessarily physical harm, but it's a form of pain. It could be rejection, it could be physical pain, it could be humiliation, things along those lines. And so one example is, and this is an extreme example, but let's imagine that you're being held up at gunpoint and someone's got a gun to your head and they're saying, "Give me your money." Well, you might argue that, well, I'm afraid of that experience. So it's not future focused. I'm in the present moment. I'm being held up by gunpoint. And I would argue that, yes, while you would probably feel fear in that moment, the fear is not based on what you are experiencing. You're actually basing your fear, or your fear is coming from the thought that is focused in the future, which may be the gun going off, you feeling pain, or worse, dying. And so it could be a fear of dying, a fear of pain, a fear of what might happen into the future, not necessarily what's going on in the present moment. Now, I can't guarantee that if you were to become focused and focus on the present moment, you wouldn't feel fear, but if you were thinking thoughts that were present-based, right? So I'm thinking thoughts of what's going on right now, and I was feeling the moment right now, and I'm not thinking seconds into the future. Could it be that fear would not exist at that point? I would argue yes, but I know some of you are going to say no. Here's another example of fear. So many people, including myself, we've had this fear of what other people think of you. And this fear is the killer of dreams. I mean, it really can suck the life out of ambition, because people are less likely to do things, or less likely to take a risk if they believe that someone else might judge them negatively, or they might get rejected. So we don't go up and ask people to go out. We don't try out new things. We don't launch our dream business because we're afraid of what others might think of us. So fear has a way of keeping us stuck. It has a way of kind of keeping us from doing things. And that's really what the job is of fear. See, the reason why we have fear is that our brains are wired to protect us. It's for self-preservation. And your brains are constantly scanning your environment and looking for things that might potentially harm you. And it becomes this fortune teller, so to speak, where it's trying to predict the future and analyze what may or may not happen in the future and steer you clear of those potential events. Now, this has served us back when we were threatened by saber-toothed tigers and being trampled by animals, but we don't have the same problems that we did anymore. Our saber-toothed tiger today, I think they come in the form of business suits, right? So they wear different clothes. But we're constantly scanning the environment, looking for what might happen to us, and we kind of set limitations to ourselves because of this fear. So my recommendation for you today, actually my empowering question for you, is to really consider what it is that you're afraid of. What is it that brings you the greatest fear? Do you have fear of what other people think of you? Are you afraid to put yourself out there and take risks? Are you afraid of following your dreams at the risk of losing income? Are you afraid of talking to a specific someone whom you really care about, but you're worried about them rejecting you? So consider what your fear is. And then the second part of that question is, what is the worst that could possibly happen, right? So is your fear rational? Is it true self-preservation where your life or your limb is in danger, where you're at risk for bodily harm, or is it really something that is outside of your comfort zone and what the fear is trying to do is to protect you from stretching yourself or growing? Because that's the reality of what fear can do, is it can limit our ability to grow. And if you've seen my previous videos, you probably heard me say that growth is one of two psychological needs that will lead to life fulfillment. So we need growth in order to be fulfilled. And sometimes it's overcoming our fear and facing our fears that allows and facilitates that growth. I hope you have an amazing week. That's all the time I've got today. Peace and love, everyone, and I will see you next Monday. Take care.